Good morning, everyone, and can I welcome you to this meeting of Development Control Committee A at Mid Suffolk District Council. First of all, I just want to remind everyone of some of the domestic arrangements. Please can you ensure that microphones are muted when you're not speaking? Please do not interrupt other speakers. Members are reminded not to use the messaging or chat function during the meeting unless it is to report a pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest or to notify myself that you wish to make a proposal. Members are reminded that they should not have alternative communication lines open during the meeting, i.e. other Teams chats, or use the emojis, and that if you are contacted by a third party during an application, can you please bring this to the attention of our legal advisor. If you are attending the meeting to speak today, welcome, but if you do persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by myself. Additionally, you'll be invited to speak and ask questions by myself and by using the hands up function. And we'll be using an e-voting system for the meeting. If you are experiencing any poor connection issues, in the first instance, can I suggest you please turn off your camera? If this does not work, turn off maybe all incoming videos, and these options can be found on the 3 dots at the top of the information bar. I'd like to remind everyone present this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewings. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to have been recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you're also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or future training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and press are not lawfully excluded. Just like to run through some of the people that are with us today. So first of all, we have Ian Deprez, who's our legal advisor. Good morning, Ian. Good morning. Robert Carmichael, who's our governance officer. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Chair.
Now I have on my list Gemma Walker and John Pateman G, the area planning managers.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
Morning. Now, is Philip Isbell with us for this meeting?
I don't believe
no,
so.
I don't say. No, he's on my list as possibly attending. Avril Goody, Catherine Hale are the case officers. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're both here. Good. Thank you. And Sam Harvey, good morning from Suffolk County Council Highways. Good morning, Sam. Is Sam with us? No.
I don't believe Sam has joined yet.
Okay, but she is due to join us, so I'm sure she'll be here in a minute. Okay, for the applications before us today, we have various ward members, including I haven't got the list. I don't think that's in front of me is entirely accurate. Maybe it is. Yeah, Councillor Barry Humphreys, Councillor Oliver Morrison, Councillor Richard Mayer, and Councillor Wendy Turner. In Mid Suffolk District Council, if you are the ward member, you may you may participate in the meeting and have your say, but you may not vote on the applications before us. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the agenda now. First item on the agenda, apologies for absence and substitutions. Do we have any, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have no apologies or substitutions.
Okay, and we now need to take a roll call for members present. I'll ask the governance officer to carry that out, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, if members could please respond with their presence. Councillor Rachel Eburn.
Present.
Councillor John Field.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Sarah Mansell.
Present.
Councillor John Matheson.
Present.
Councillor Richard Mayer.
Present.
Councillor Dave Muller.
Present.
And Councillor Tim Passmore.
Present.
Thank you, Chair. All committee members are present.
Right, thank you for that. Okay, and now agenda item number 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest by members. Are there any?
Yes.
We have a few hands that have gone up. Councillor Mansell and Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I just felt that perhaps I need to declare a non-pecuniary interest as the event director of the yet-to-be-launched Chiltern Fields Park Run, which uses some of the paths as part of the Taylor Wimpey development. So that is the agenda item, first item. I'll declare a non-pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I am the Vice Chair of the Stowmarket Town Council Planning Committee, and we've previously discussed this case at that committee. So it's a non-pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy with that?
Yes, Chair. I'm quite happy those are properly disclosed as non-pecuniary interest, but no more than that. Thank you. Thanks
very much. Declarations of lobbying by members. Do we have any? Councillor Mansell.
Oh, that's a legacy hand. Sorry,
no
I'll
problem.
take it away.
No problem. Any lobbying? No, none to declare. Okay. Any declarations of personal site visits by members? None received. Okay, thank you. So that takes us on to agenda item number 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of February 2021. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No. Could I have a proposer for the minutes and a seconder, please? Councillor Muller proposing.
Happy to propose. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Chair.
And Councillor Mayer seconding. Thank you. Okay. Could I ask the governance officer to now conduct an electronic vote on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. If members could please go to the modern.gov app and click the onto today's agenda and click the plus sign in the top right hand corner and click on the subsection for voting and attendance. The vote will appear on that screen in a light blue colour under the voting tab. The vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That is unanimous. 8 votes for, and I believe Councillor Matheson has got onto modern.gov, so we don't need to take his vote verbally.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the minutes of the meeting have now been confirmed and they'll be signed at the next practical opportunity. Thank you, everyone. Okay, agenda item number 6 is to receive a notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme. Have we received any, please?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the schedule of the planning applications. First item is item 7A in our papers on page 23, Northfield View, Phase 2B, Fuller Way, Stowmarket. And I now ask the case officer, Gemma Walker, to introduce the application to the committee. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just if we could bear with me a second while I get that sharing up and running as ever. There we go. Hopefully everybody can down.
Yeah, we can see that.
Thank you. Sorry, just nice to check. Thank you. So this is an application for reserve matters on land at Northfield View, which is a phase 2B of Chiltern Lees in Stowmarket. We can see the approximate location south of the A14 in Stowmarket. And then again, zooming in slightly, so the A14 coming up to the Tot Hill Junction and Stowmarket our way through here. And zooming in slightly, we can just start to see some of the road names on the previous phases of development coming through. And this is our current phase that we're looking at in here and coming across to the Chiltern Fields Sports Ground. This shows you the wider area. So just to confirm, this is a reserve matters following the outline here for 600, and also a full application included the road, which we can see running through the centre of our site down to the roundabout and across through here. That was already approved as a full application. So what we're considering today is the appearance, scale, layout and landscaping of this proposal. And then just to confirm, this area to the south would be the subject of a future reserve matters, but the area to the north is essentially the area that has been granted and is under commencement. So looking at constraints, just to confirm, we do have a listed building, but it is somewhat separate from this part of the site and was considered as part of the wider site development. And then we've got the assessment boundaries for Stowmarket and across here for one house. You can just see, this is the area of development at the moment that has got existing reserve matters consent, and you can see it's being built out at the moment, essentially. So looking at the layout plan, this is a zoomed in version of the site. So we can see here the existing and commenced development to the north, which is phase 2A, already approved by Reserve Matters. We've got a community orchard, a local equipped area for play, SUDs around the outside of the site, and public open space essentially either side. The main road running through the site and then across the bottom, and our proposed residential development for 100 houses. This is a zoomed in version with just some of the detail on there. So we've got the 100 houses with various demarcations on here, but I'll run through those. We've essentially got a plan for each of those, which hopefully is a bit clearer. So I just thought that was helpful just as the detailed version. So this is the character plan. This follows through from the original master plan, and then that's been used to run through the site. As you can see up here on the existing part of the development, that's also Woodland View character area. We carry that through to the external edge of the site as Woodland View. We've got a neighbourhood edge and the church view areas to the side. The area around the roundabout is a specific parade, and then the main central spine character areas and an inner link area. So all have a slightly different character area using the same style of houses, but with some different design features just to provide those navigation points by way of running through the site. Looking down then to affordable housing, this was agreed at Reserve Matters stage. So the mix and tenure was subject to section 106, but just to confirm the location of them, there was a slight concern initially over clustering, but when we've looked at that across the whole of the site, affordable housing, strategic housing are content with them. And you can see they are on different streets, so some onto the central area, some onto the private roads either side. So they are content that the clustering of those is acceptable. Just to pick up on story heights, we're looking at predominantly 2-storey buildings across the site in the darker blue. And then we've got single-storey garages to properties which have garages, and then we've got some in the pinky purple colour, which would be 2.5-storey buildings. But these are used to punctuate the street scene, so as at the entrance to the site, and particularly around the roundabout, which hopefully you can just see. That's the beginning of a suggestion that we might replicate that around the roundabout to create a specific character area around that roundabout. Then to go on to parking, because I appreciate this has been a concern for members at various times. So all of the properties do have the appropriate number of parking spaces in accordance with Suffolk parking guidance. There are still some with triple parking. However, in accordance with Suffolk parking guidance, which does accept that on some private drives in appropriate circumstances, these are all on private drives. So if I briefly run through, we've got some here. Hopefully members can see you've got 2 blue spaces followed by the green garage. Essentially, so there are triple parking, but these are all on this grey area of private road. Similarly here on the private driveway, and around this area, also all on the private driveway. In addition, this site does have visitor spaces adjacent to all of the triple parking areas. Of particular note on that one, the proposal should provide 25 visitor parking spaces. It has in fact got 35, so it does provide an extra amount of visitor parking, particularly in the areas where the triple parking is situated. And I have confirmed with Suffolk County Council Highways that that is an acceptable approach, both in the combination of the private driveway and in combination with the extra visitor parking in these locations to help stop movements in the highway affecting the flow of traffic. To then pick up on that again slightly in terms of boundary treatments, you can also see around these areas, just hopefully, sorry, it's slightly light, the orangey brown colour is this timber knee rail fencing. So this would also help prevent parking other than in appropriate spaces. And again, you prevent the issue of parking on the highway. So overall, that's the reason we're content with the triple parking, despite we wouldn't normally accept that. It is in accordance with the allowance under the parking guidance, and in combination with the treatment and the visitor parking. That's why we feel it would be acceptable in this case. To move on to the street scenes, I have provided members in the bundle with the full plans and elevations, but I wasn't planning on running through those here for you because there are quite a few. If there are specific ones members would like to look at, of course, that's no trouble, but hopefully that's available for you in your packs and you can look. But just to pick up on the street scene. So we've got Northfield Woodland View here. So we've got, this is obviously facing into the character areas, so the matching character areas between 2A and 2B sites in the Woodland View area. The middle street scene is looking at the corner turn of the buildings, so we can see the Spine Road and the buildings through here, and this would be overlooking the play area that's on phase 2A. So I mentioned the local equipped area for play at the north of this site. This is the street scene that would be looking towards that. And then at the bottom we've got the essentially the Diamond Parade. So we've got the Spine Road coming in through here with essentially we're sort of stood on the roundabout, if you will, and then you can just see here particularly the 2.5-storey houses that are proposed. So you can see they're not significantly higher than we might expect, or indeed a full 3-storey, but it does just offer that degree of design feature to give you a navigation point through and around the site. To then take on to the site itself, hopefully you can see in the bottom right hand corner of each slide, I've tried to suggest roughly where we're looking. So we're stood at the northern corner of our current site looking across it. Hopefully the snow is not too off-putting. Sorry, that's one of the things we encounter occasionally. Sorry. Why are we not moving on? There we go. So then we've come down the Spine Road and we're looking back up. We can see the housing under construction here at the moment, and then looking across to the corner of the Chiltern Field Sports Club. And now we're looking again slightly further round to see that existing housing we were just looking at to our right, and looking around across to the north. And then for slightly further round, again across the site. And then ones without snow, so again, hopefully that's helpful. So this time we're on the far western side of our site, looking across and again seeing the existing development. And again, just looking south this time. And across the site. And looking down, we can see the road under construction. And then we're at essentially the corner of the Chiltern Field Sports Club, but looking across the site. So Jen, just to return to the layout plan, the design is considered to be in keeping with the previous development on parts of the site that's been approved, and indeed with the overall master plan. This follows that reserve matters approval and permission for the central road, and as mentioned, the master plan. Overall in keeping with the existing development across the wider site, and the layout, appearance, scale and landscaping are considered to be appropriate, and as such the recommendation is for approval, and that's on pages 37 and 38 of your bundle. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, so happy to open it up to colleagues for questions, and first up is Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, could you say a little bit more about the travel plan situation? Only the reported comment that you have at the moment in the report seems to leave us not with it not all tied up yet.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, my apologies. I meant to mention that at the beginning. The two things on that, if I can, we've got an ecology late paper, which was just an update. So hopefully that's okay for members, and we've seen that, but it didn't add anything new. And in terms of the travel plan, yep, been in touch recently with County Council and confirmed that the travel plan for 2A has now been agreed. So it was in process at the time we received that comment, but it has now been agreed. I think Cannon Consulting are undertaking that travel plan for phase 2A.
Thanks. You, Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions, if that's okay. First question is about chimneys. Some of the designs of houses have chimneys. Can you tell me if they are what I call false chimneys or chimneys that are required because there's an open fire? I understand that the heating fuel for this development is gas, and I wonder if there's been any discussion of using other main sources of heat. And thirdly, a question about the very low number of 2-bedroom market houses. I think if I've got my figures correct, there are 7 2-bedroom market housing. and I don't quite follow the table, the layout of the table we've got on page 60, which is our strategic housing response. I'm not quite sure what the columns mean, but I got the impression that maybe this is a bit low on 2-bed market houses. So I just wondered if there was a comment about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Gemma, do you want to come in?
Yeah, of course. Yes, I do believe the chimneys are false. They are off the majority of the properties and are a feature to essentially help provide a navigation through the site. And this is very similar to what has been agreed on the previous reserve matters and the master plan, albeit appreciating this is not something that we've been particularly keen on. And hence the reason they are just used in those circumstances rather than across the site as a generic extra feature. In terms of gas heating, yes, again, it's something we try and bring up with all developers through applications. Again, appreciating that that's something that we need to work towards alternatives. But that is the proposal at this time, and again, following on from the existing reserve matters and outline consent. The 2-bed houses.
Sorry, can you just expand on that point?
In terms of the gas heating?
Yeah.
So it's not something that we can require essentially at the moment. As I said, I appreciate members are keen on alternatives, and with the climate emergency, the alternatives are something we try and explore with developers, but it's not something we can insist upon at this stage. Is that helpful?
Can I also just add something, Chair, if I may, just to that? Obviously, what's in front of us is reserve matters. So we are dealing with the appearance and scale, layout. We're unfortunately not dealing with the fueling of the properties. And I also just want to add, having dealt with this case of the master plan of this site originally, the road layout, the main road that goes through with the roundabout, is in place, and one of the reasons that came forward first was to enable the gas pipeline to be put into place early on. So that investment has already taken place in order to ensure that the gas is available throughout all phases of this proposal to the ultimate endpoint of 815 houses when it's finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Gemma.
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the market housing, again, I think the mix was looked at as outline, and although this stage has got a different mix overall, I think strategic housing were content and have just said they would like some more 1-beds on the next phase, and so it's looking at that overall. Given we've got various different phases as part of that. Thank you.
Did you want to come back at all, Councillor Mansell?
Well, the questions have been answered. Whether I agree with them or not is open to debate. So I don't think I can say anything else at the moment.
Thanks. Okay, Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Gemma, for your presentation. Could I just ask about get a bit more detail about keeping that slide you've got up on the screen at the moment on the northwest side? Could you just clarify what landscaping is there and sort of the relationship between, could you just confirm again the height, because it's very small type in the papers, the height of the fencing that's alongside the parking spaces, and then where you've got the red line defining the site, what additional landscaping will be there? And following on from that, the view into the site across the fields from Hawley, how will that be prepped with regards to landscaping?
Sorry to be a bore, but what I'm just going to do is we've got highways here, but they're only here for 10 minutes because they're between meetings. So if any member has a question on the highways, could I ask you to bring those up now so we can get answers while we have highways with us? So then we'll come back to Councillor Eburn's point, if that's right. Does anyone wish to come in on a highways matter? Nothing at this stage. Okay, because we have Sam here for 10 minutes. Okay, back to you, Rachel. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So just the question was with regards to the what's the height of the fencing by the parking spaces on that northwest side, and what's the relationship between that and the landscaping on the edge of the site, and I can't get an appreciation of how deep that landscape buffer is. So if you could just explain a bit more on that, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, no problem. Just bear with me while I move back up a plan. Right. So the faint orange line around the very edge is 0.4 metre high timber knee rail. So that's the sort of a one upright with a beam across the top down to another upright. So it's very low, essentially does just stop sort of cars parking there or people walking in. I mean, you still climb over it, but it just sort of provides that differentiation between the two. So that runs around through here. You know, rather than the higher level fencing, the 3-4 designs of fencing elsewhere, the pink we can see through the middle, and the blue, second one down, and then the reds as the brick wall through here. So we're not proposing those over this side towards the public open space. And I just think, so I'll just scroll down again. This might be marginally quicker. There we go. Sorry, I don't think I included the landscape plan on this. I don't think I can measure off this plan. If you could bear with me a second, I can just get that up and measure off if that would be helpful. But essentially, we do have the roadway and then the public open space and then the pathway coming down before we get to the edge of the site, and hence the buffer. And I have had confirmation from Landscape that they were content with the proposed scheme and that it was in accordance with the master plan. But I'm happy to measure that if that would be preferable.
Yes, I just wanted an indication of what, because looking into the site from outside, as it were, that doesn't seem to be much of a buffer on the current site, and so I just wanted to get an understanding of what the buffer should be on this one. So, but in due course of the meeting, that would be great. Thank you, Gemma.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor May, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Can you tell me a little more about the car electric charging points? Is my reading of the documentation correct that those charging points will only be provided in houses with garages?
So we have suggested by condition a scheme for the electric vehicle charging so that we can agree that. I think that has historically been something that we've looked at because it's easy to provide a plug in a garage, but certainly not going forward. That has been something we've been able to provide, and essentially making sure that spaces are next to houses gives you the opportunity to make sure that on the outside of a house we can still provide that electricity point. So that's something that we would be looking to secure by condition.
So you're saying that each dwelling will have an electric car point?
Well, we asked for a scheme, so we'd literally look at it space by space. So there are some spaces for houses whereby they are further away because they're in a small parking area to the rear. So where it may not be possible, in those cases, we might suggest that we agree a ducting scheme. But we'll look at that on a space by space basis as part of the scheme. So I can't guarantee it would be every space or every property, but every space where it is possible. And we think that we can resolve that as an issue, then yes, that's what we would look at.
Yeah, okay. Just, yeah, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Thank you. Obviously, ducting schemes will be useful. Just to return for a minute to the sort of heating issues, it's obviously good to provide the opportunity for retrofitting in the not too distant future, but just thinking about insulation levels, I wonder if you have any comments of what sort of level that's pitched at, and is there any provision for renewables like solar panels to be fitted to these properties? Thank you.
We haven't had anything specific, but again, we have put the condition on as suggested by the Environmental Health Sustainability Officer for a scheme for water, energy and resource efficiency measures so that we can agree those, but they're not specified at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, electric vehicles, that's them dealt with now. The other one on page 28, the construction management plan submitted is inadequate. Has that been remedied?
Sorry, just looking. Okay, so on this one, if you look at this, I think probably I haven't made it clear enough. We then received updated comments from environmental health. So while the initial comments say that the construction management plan is inadequate, the comment above, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I'm satisfied that the CEMS, construction environmental management, meets the requirements and is suitable and need to be complied with. And again, that is secured by condition.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Can you? I've got a question. Could you just confirm how many houses have triple parking, and what size houses they are?
Yeah, of course. So initially there were 20 houses with triple parking. We, during the course of the application, reduced that down to 16 because there seemed some obvious solutions from my side where we could just shuffle the parking around to prevent that. So we're now down to 16, and they are the 4-bedroom properties that have the triple parking.
So the 4-bedroom parking have triple parking with 1 electric charging point for 3 cars that can't get close to that. The 3rd car won't be able to get close to the house.
Well, that would be something we would have to look at almost on a space by space basis and consider is 1 charging point in the garage sufficient for triple parking, or does it also need 1 on the side? And if that's something members have got strong concerns about, and we wanted to put that on by way of an informative note, and or indeed as part of the condition that's got to, where there's triple parking, each space or however many spaces members feel should have triple parking, then we can take that away as part of that scheme.
Okay, and could you point out where the so we know triple parking, 1 of the spaces is in a garage. So that means you have 3 cars using 2 car parking spaces and a garage, which often gets used for other reasons. So where are those cars supposed to park when they don't actually have a physical space to park on their drive?
So the orange spaces, so we've got 2 visitor parking spaces there, 3 around here and a further 3 here, which is the small cluster where we've got triple parking here.
So can you just clarify, that's for how many houses? So that's 5 parking spaces for how many 4-bedroom houses?
So there are 7
triple parking
in that cluster,
with 5 parking spaces for visitors.
Sorry, 8.
8.
3 and 2 there.
Okay, so okay, and on the other side, please.
Yep, so 5 in this cluster, and there are 5 visitor spaces, and then there are 4 in this cluster with 3 visitor spaces.
And those are all 4-bedroom houses?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think I've got the plan for Councillor Eburn as well, if I can
yes, please.
Just work out how to share that, sorry. Might be easier to...
Gemma, is it the open space plan you want for the northern side? I've got that on my screen. Do you want me to try and share instead?
You have.
Unfortunately, I've got it on iDocs, which isn't ideal, but if I just share it as a screen, then that might work, if you bear with me. In theory, that should come up.
Super, that's exactly the one. What you probably can't see is the key, because I'm conscious that's on the other side. You might have to zoom out a wee bit, John, to show some of that.
I come out.
It might.
I thought it's not the best trying to look through iDocs, unfortunately. It's not the best program. And it also is quite slow to load up large plans like this. So give it a moment, it'll update and then fill in the gaps down here. Here we go. Unfortunately, it's a bit blurred, isn't it? We need the key, do we?
Well, I just thought it might help with Councillor Eburn's question in terms of what there is. I mean, I think essentially you've got the boundary landscaping with the footpath, and then we've got the areas of, I think from memory, I think they were wildflower meadows, but it is on the key if needs be. I'm sure we can zoom in on just the key, perhaps, John. Sorry.
Zoom in to 50, maybe that'll. No, that won't.
No, we'll let's get off the side. Zoom in a bit more. Has it got it on the tags on there as well?
Let's put the mix in, so I can just about see a various mix of hedgerows and trees and so on all the way along here.
Would you just want to talk us through it if we can't read it, rather than let's just talk through what's on there, Gemma?
Yep. So I get my version.
Yeah, I'll just try and see if I can do anything else with this. I would say though, isn't that whole area to be transferred to the council though? Ultimately, that's part of the 106 agreement.
Yes, it's part of the management agreement.
Yeah. No, this is not helping. I'll come back out of this because it's now not going very well at all.
Yeah, I can't get the key to load up either. I'm having.
I can get that far out, but I can't actually close in on it, which is a nightmare, really, isn't it? That's really annoying. Okay, I'll come out. We'll waste a lot of time otherwise doing that.
Okay, Councillor Field.
Sorry, that was an old hand. I wasn't even going to comment about the IT problems we don't have.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Any other points that we wish to raise before we move on to the next part of this application? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So we'll now move to public speakers. Now, we don't have a representative of the parish council or the town council, and I will. So I'll now ask the objector, ask the objector. Oh, sorry, I'm misreading this. So, Robert, can you just clarify? We don't actually have an objector or a supporter, is that correct?
Yes, apologies, Chair. That's a typo on my part.
Okay,
so we don't have anyone from the parish, we don't have an objector, we don't have a supporter, but we do have the applicant and agent.
So we'll go straight into the applicant and agent, James Bailey and Nicole Lane, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please. And Robert, if you can time this for us. Thank you.
Oh, good morning, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Fantastic. In advance of our 3 minutes, I was just wondering, would it be possible to actually properly introduce ourselves this morning before we start?
Yes, but I mean, you are the agent. That's what we need to know, I think.
Fantastic. Well, I was going to say that, yes, I'm James Bailey, planning consultant to Taylor Wimpey, and I've worked on all of the previous phases at Northfield View, Chiltern Lees, as it was formerly known, over a number of years. I'm joined this morning by Nicole Lane, who's the project lead on the phase. But we also have other representatives from Taylor Wimpey with us this morning, including Mark Chapman and Andrew Wright, and also people from other technical disciplines. And they're available should members have any specific questions this morning. And thank you, Chair. That's all I really wanted to say by way of introduction, to let you know that we do have people available for any specific questions. If you're happy, should I make a start?
Well, I'm afraid I would put that within your 3 minutes. I mean, you know, I introduced you and you've just reintroduced yourself again. So the clock is ticking.
No problem. Well, here we are again this morning, a further phase of development at Taylor Wimpey site here in Northfield View in Stowmarket. It continues to be a highly successful site for Taylor Wimpey, and it's a site that Mid Suffolk Council know very well. Having featured as an area of housing growth back in the council's core strategy, it then became a cornerstone of the Stowmarket Area Action Plan, and following an adopted development brief that covers the whole of the site, over 800 houses, Taylor Wimpey have been bringing this site forward over a number of different and carefully considered phases. Phase 1 was a detailed application for 215 dwellings and land for a new primary school that was consented in 2015, and a full infrastructure application to cover the whole site was then granted planning permission in July of 2017. An outline permission for the remaining 600 dwellings on the rest of the site followed in July of 2018. With phase 2A for 175 dwellings being approved then in November 2018. The scheme before you this morning is a reserved matters application called phase 2B that is seeking planning consent for 100 dwellings. It includes 20 affordable units as per the 20% requirement that was agreed through the earlier section 106 with both the district and the county councils. Important strategic landscaping and public open space is also included within the application. 2B has frequently been referred to as a connecting phase, which links between the housing from phase 2A to the north and also phase 2C to the south. The infrastructure is already in place, and this application is essentially filling in the housing parcels and open spacing areas accordingly. As with previous phases, Taylor Wimpey have gone out of their way to ensure that the correct engagement has taken place. Following numerous meetings with officers, there have also been detailed discussions with the Town Council and the parish councils of One House and Hawley as well. There were no comments from the County Highways. A recommendation of approval was received from the County Floods team, and a note of support from the application from One House Parish Council themselves. There were no objections to the application from any of the stakeholders. Following that level of detail, it shows what the extent that we've gone to with this particular application in this particular phase. Northfield View is a strategically important site for Mid-Suffolk. It is featured as an identified area for growth over many years, and it remains part of the emerging joint local plan. And we believe it's been sensitively brought forward over these different phases by Taylor Wimpey, this phase in front of you being no exception as well this morning. The proposal has been discussed at length, as we've said, and it's been made in line with the adopted development brief. So I was going to end there and say thank you very much for your time. But just to reiterate, there are several of us available should you have any questions this morning.
Thanks very much. Okay, I've got a question to start with, if I've got no other hands up. Can you just explain why you've kept 16 properties with triple parking? Because they have a very poor track record in Mid-Suffolk. They don't work in estates. We know people don't use them. So why have you kept so many in?
It's a good point on there. I think the key thing is obviously in terms of size and space on there. We know, as you quite rightly say, Chair, that over a period of time there are other examples of schemes that this has proven to be a problem. I think it's one that we are genuinely aware of, and gradually try to reduce this down over the various phases, and hopefully people can see that from phase 1 into 2A and where we are now, and indeed through for subsequent phases as well. The difficulty is that these are the sorts of things that somebody just made a message on there that the house builders need to address when they're looking at their various sort of layouts and schemes as well. We have tried to reduce the number down during the course of the application. We know that there is a sensitivity around that, but equally, we've also tried to work this particular scheme into the constraints that's already going on in terms of the rights of way and the landscaping. And although there are still a number, and we accept that on there in front of you, it's a balance, if you like, Chair, between making sure that every other part of a scheme, including, as I say, the open space and the landscaping and the provision, works as well. We've got an excessive provision of visitor parking. We hopefully you'll acknowledge that as well. That again hasn't been allocated to specific housing. It could have been on there, but we discussed that through with the case officer, and we've ended up with a series of potential opportunities. But again, the difficulty is it's very difficult to sort of change human practice on there. And
so can I just ask a follow-up question then? So you could get rid of the triple parking if you had more 3-bedroom houses instead of 4-bedroom houses, is that correct?
I think, to be quite honest, we're going to have I've got some of our colleagues from Taylor Wimpey if it's one that you would like me to introduce on, because I'm very conscious that this is an important topic. Mark's obviously just appeared on here as well, one of the directors at East Anglia.
Yeah, morning Chair, morning members. So I just thought I'd join today's meeting because we do appreciate this is a particularly sort of sensitive issue. Back in 2017, James and I sat in front of you for the outline planning permission, and many of you will remember that there was a viability that the planning permission was actually based on. So the way that viability had been put together was looking at the phase 1 site and effectively pro-ratering it up. So the phase 1 site has 18% triple stack parking and only 8% visitor parking. So that was what the viability was based on. Appreciating that it's an issue that probably we weren't as aware of back in 2017 as we are now. We've done whatever we can to work these out. The housing mix. So Chair, you mentioned there you can make 4 beds to 3 beds. That's true. The problem is we're then affecting the housing mix that the viability was based on. So importantly, back on phase 1, the 18% of triple stack parking is accessed off both private and adoptable roads. So we're now down to 16% triple stack parking, so 16 properties, 35% visitor parking, so a massive increase there and well above the Suffolk levels in the parking standards. And they're all off private roads, so none of these properties have got triple stack parking off the adoptable roads, which helps. So we have worked hard, and your officers do work as hard on this point. It's very difficult on a site like this where this is 100 homes in isolation, but it's part of a 600 home phase. We've obviously got another 325 to bring to you in the future, and we can always undertake to you that we will never have more than 18% on this site, because that's what we based our viability on at the time of outline. But I can't say that there won't be any at all, because then we do get back into that viability discussion where it's you can't fit the amount of housing that obviously pays for the infrastructure, the school, that's required for this scheme, and we obviously know that affordable housing was negotiated hard here and got to a level of 20%. So we're doing as much as we can within that constraint of viability, and we really have gone a long way. We do really appreciate the issues, and we know that particularly in the Mid-Suffolk area, there's some examples where triple stack parking has caused a lot of issues. Particularly somewhere like Cedars Park, and where I would just say there is there's another factor where some of those developments were brought forward before the current Suffolk parking standards, making sure that 4 beds had at least 3 spaces and the like. So some of those have less than the current parking standards allow. We've got those current parking standards and we're over providing in visitor parking. I personally live on one of our developments where we have triple stack parking and we have visitor parking, as we've shown today, and it works fantastically, because on the days where you really need visitor parking, Christmas Day and those sorts of things, everybody parks on the driveway and the visitors actually use the visitor parking. So it's a much more flexible approach than allocating visitor parking to individual houses, because obviously on those quieter days, your neighbour can't go and park in your parking space. So we do find that this approach works, and like I say, we can undertake that going forward you will never see more than 18%, which was the agreed at viability. Okay. But we're doing everything we can to reduce it.
Thank you for that explanation. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. Perhaps I could start while Mr. Chapman is in front of us, so to speak, as well. I was intending to ask in our conditions at the end of this that we condition a small number of homes that are particularly suitable for people with disabilities, and what I've got in mind is 5 that are to the standard of M42 and 2 to the standard of M43, and I just wondered whether you think you can accommodate that within your viability that you've just been talking about.
It certainly comes at a cost, but that's not wouldn't be my main concern. Certainly the Part M43, that's a wheelchair user dwelling, yes. And that means that for someone who's not a wheelchair user, it's not a particularly comfortable living environment. So things like kitchen worktops are reduced so that if you're in a wheelchair you have better access. All homes that are built now, can be adapted into wheelchair user properties, and that's part of building regulations, what we would call Part M, M1 really, where light switches access to the property, all those things allow for ambient disabled and visitor access for disabled use. But the M43 is wheelchair users, and like I say, you know, we're selling to, obviously there's a housing need in general. I don't know what figures you have in terms of requiring wheelchair users, but it's not something that if you're selling on the open market, if someone who isn't in a wheelchair looks to buy that home, it won't be a comfortable living environment for them.
Well, I think that the evidence is in the 10 yearly census, and certainly that would support. You know, the two is this is exactly 100 properties, I think, and is it? Yes, 100, and you know, that's 2%, which would be reasonably consistent with the census figures. So I just wanted to put that point to you. Shall I continue to my other point, Chair?
Yeah, they're questions. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, in terms of the obviously, James, everyone's familiar that the committee is increasingly not happy with gas central heating. What I'm wondering is whether you're prepared to commit to offer photovoltaic installations to people buying off plan, so that you can take advantage of the fact that you've got all the scaffolding and everything already there, so that there isn't the cost of retrofitting to that extent.
So in short, I mean, we can offer, to be honest, when we've done it before, it doesn't really get taken up. So on the point of gas heating, obviously, it's something that we're working with energy providers on with the future in mind. Now, as Mr. Pateman G pointed out, the gas infrastructure was put in early on this development because it was needed to feed the school. And going forward, what the big energy providers are telling us is that they will have to use the gas network, but for other solutions. So I know in the press there's been hydrogen gas mixes discussed, and there's areas of the country that's being tested on. So we know there's an electricity issue, so they're not going to be able to switch every single home to electric, but they will be using the gas infrastructure to deliver new forms of energy to housing. Now, as a house builder, we can't dictate that. It's a regulated industry, the energy industry, but we're working very hard with those partners to make sure that it's future proofed. So in terms of the photovoltaics, there are some offered, there are some on the development already, but like I say, it's not something we tend to offer as an optional extra because we've never been taken up on it. If you ask for us to offer it as an optional extra, then yes, we can do that. But I don't want to tell you that we'll have a large uptake, because I suspect we won't.
So you're prepared to offer it?
Yes, yeah, we're prepared to offer it.
Yeah, can we minute that? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Eburn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the agent and applicant for your being here today. My question was with regards to advanced landscaping, and particularly, as you might have heard my question to the officer earlier, on the current site, there's a very stark boundary between the housing and the field. In the reports, I have now found the landscaping report, and it says it's advanced landscaping. Can you confirm that you would actually put landscaping in before the houses you commence building the houses, so that we don't end up with that stark boundary that we've had on the previous parts of this this overall site? So if you could confirm that for me and the timing of that, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so again, at the outline, there was actually a phasing plan agreed for these future phases for that landscaping. So with the reserve matters, there's a landscape master plan that's been submitted, and that will have further detail added through conditions. But yes, the plan is to always install that ahead, And one of the things we'll be looking to do with the next reserve matters is actually bring forward some plans for open space and the play areas as well, because obviously we want to make sure all of that infrastructure comes forward early. So in short, yes, yeah, we do need to undertake that landscaping in advance.
And if I can
I just,
oh, sorry,
can I just come back, say when in advance you do mean before you start pouring any concrete? I mean, not just before the kind of occupation, as it were, of the housing.
Yes, yeah, and again, Mr. Pateman-G will probably remember better than me, but I believe there is a phasing plan for these future phases that actually dictates that that planting will be done before we commence the housing. Now that doesn't go all the way up to the boundary of the housing, because obviously you need construction moving space, but there's a buffer of around 10 or 15 metres that has to be planted early. So yes, we do undertake to do that.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
And just to follow on from that, Chair, if I may, just to say we've started discussions with a group from Stowmarket Town Council. They've approached Taylor Wimpey if they can assist with some tree planting, which we've started discussions on. And equally, as Mark has said, going towards the final phase, which has got the sports and recreation facilities. I think that it's been mentioned several times when we've been out to meet with the parishes about any floodlighting and any sort of protection. So the onus is on us to get the landscaping and the planting in nice and early. So that has been made loud and clear. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Councillor Field.
Thank you. Just take advantage of your presence, if I may, with a couple of questions. One of them really, we're seeing a pretty dramatic shift towards home working at the moment. I wondered if, as a nimble company, you're making any adaptations or moving in that direction at all to accommodate such trends. The other one is sort of similar on environmental grounds, presumably a fabric first type approach, but are you just sticking to sort of what the building regulations require, or is there any intention to improve insulation capabilities to reduce heating costs and the impact on the environment? And obviously Scandinavians have been using triple glazing for 40 years. Are we moving in that direction at last? Or, you know, I'm looking for your comments really on those two.
Yes, so on the home working, yes, we're certainly seeing a shift from our purchasers towards home working, and we're now exploring more and more where people who would normally buy a 2-bed will actually buy a 3-bed because they'll use the 3rd bedroom as a study, and that goes throughout the housing range. So yes, we are, and what we're looking at is what do our customers expect then in terms of electrical infrastructure in the house to do that. Nowadays it doesn't tend to be too much more than a few sockets because of Wi-Fi and the rest. So yes, we're certainly allowing for that. In terms of energy, yes, so yes, there's a fabric first approach always, because the best thing you can do is stop energy leaving the walls and windows of the house rather than replacing it. But the new building regulations that recently were consulted on, that looks like it's going to be changing to, rather than registering a development under one regulation and building the whole development. So historically we would have been able to register 600 homes here under 2013 regulations and build it out. That's not the case going forward. So you've probably heard about the Part L and F that was consulted on throughout last year. What will happen is as those regulations get adopted, house builders will need to make any house that they haven't started to those new regulations, and that's a combination of increased specification. So it could be increased wall thicknesses to get even more insulation on, but also things like technology. So air source heat pumps and alike are the more likely to come through. There'll be probably increased PV, but that will actually be dealt with through the building regulations going forward. So as we go through this site and those building regulations actually come into force, we will be required to meet those new regulations, and my understanding at the moment is any foundation that goes in after June 2023 will have to meet those new regulations. This phase doesn't actually start until January 2023 because it takes that long to detail, design, tender, get contractors on board. So most of this phase will actually be under those new regulations. I presume
Thank you for that.
Government.
Thank you for that. Hope on the horizon.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Having the earlier discussion about the landscaping, I've looked at the whatever it is, the ecological mitigation plan, and could somebody explain to me why the hedgehog-friendly fencing is only in certain parts of the development? My other question is just purely out of interest. About the area of the development that you've called Hawley Church View. Can you really see Hawley Church from those houses?
If we take the latter one first, if we may, thank you, Councillor Mansell. I think that that is probably a little bit far in terms of the view, but nonetheless, what has happened is that's something that's historic from the development brief when that was sort of done many years ago, and John Payman G and Councillor Matheson and others will recall those were one of those areas that were looked at. Indeed, when we're looking at the final phase, we've been talking about views towards Frimborough Church, and actually you can't see that one either. So it's one of those where perhaps the definition isn't quite right, but certainly the alignment and the way that this is all worked and orientated is still spot on. And again, it's one of those that sort of evolved from being an identified area in the core strategy all the way through a development brief, and actually it's coming out of the ground now. So you're probably quite right. It probably does need to be renamed over a period, but yes, it's still there. In terms of the hedgehog holes, as it were, the hedgehog highway, we'd like to think that our ecologists that have worked with us on various phases throughout this have got that right. Was there a concern that perhaps there wasn't enough highways, should we say, for the hedgehogs through the development? Was that the concern?
Well, I've never seen a map showing them before, so thank you for putting the detail on the map. Or maybe I just haven't looked at them, but I was just intrigued as to why. Okay, I can understand them being around the edges near the green space, but there's sort of one hedgehog highway that does head towards the central spine road on one side, but there's nothing like that on the other. I mean, obviously there is a reason for this, and I was just interested. So you don't need to answer it, but you've obviously thought about it. Your ecologist has decided that those are the ones that are needed to be done. I'd always assumed that maybe they all had little hedgehog holes in. I didn't realise that it was only a specified few.
Well, I think that's excellent, because I'm going to look to Mark and say, did we bring our hedgehog highway specialist with us? And I know the answer to that question. I think the point of this is that this is one of those where there is an evolution. I think it's very important that some of these enhancements are done. These are the sort of plans that people have been requiring over a number of years. So actually, we've got one in front of us which we can look at. Yes, I think it's quite helpful to have those points. We'll certainly feed them back on there. And indeed, perhaps next time when we do come, we'll bring our specialist along. But thank you for raising that, and I'm grateful you've noted it as well.
I think it's a first at the planning committee. Okay, Councillor Matheson.
Yes, Chair. sorry to have to come back to this, but Mr. Chapman did say that all the properties would be wheelchair adaptable. But no, I think that category 1, and I've got the part M up in front of me now. Category 1 are visitable dwellings. Category 2 are the adaptable dwellings. And if he was going to provide all properties to be up to standard to 2, that would be great. But I think another developer recently, a couple of committees ago, did say that they were going to do everything to M41, which was good, but that's not M42 and it's not adaptable. So I think we need to be clear what we are getting there, please.
Yeah, no, apologies if I said that. What I meant was every property will be M4-1. As you say, M4-2 is adaptable. So that, and when we say adaptable, we're talking about major adaptations. So we're talking about being able to take out a wall between a bedroom and a bathroom, so that you can put a hoist in to hoist from a bed to a bath. No, we're not undertaking to do that. It's the M4-1 where it's accessible to visitors, to guests. Like I say, things like the access into the property allows for ambient disabled, so no large steps. There's always a route into the property where you, if you are sort of ambient disabled, you're able to get in, and things like the electrics are at a height where you can use them, but it's still designed around fully abled bodied people.
Thank you. Yes, I think you've got the point. The evidence is there, so we'll come back to that later on. Thank you.
Councillor Field, did you want to come back, or we're going to move on?
Move on, thank you.
Move on. Okay. If you take your well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for answering all those questions.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have two ward members, Councillor Barry Humphries and Councillor Oliver Amoroson, and neither are here today, and neither have commented or written in or added any comments. So we can't take questions for the ward members, so therefore we go straight into debate. So I'd now like to open up for debate, over to members to discuss and reach a conclusion on all the information that's been put before us today. Councillor Muller, your hand's gone up first.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened with interest to what we've heard so far, but I still have a very big concern about the number of triple parking spaces on this development, which is 16 properties, 16% of the actual development. And I might sound like a record that's got stuck in its groove, but I see this on a daily basis where the number of cars per household seems to increase. People do not use their garages, and we see the cars parked on the pavement or grass verges. Generally, I like the development. I like the ecology aspects of it, but I still have deep concerns about the triple parking. And I know in the past this committee has deferred applications where triple parking has been an issue, and the developers come back with an alternative plan. But I listen with interest what other colleagues have to say. Thank you, Chair.
We don't have any other hands up, so I'm happy to comment. And with me, I do have a real bee in my bonnet as well about triple parking, because I've been to estates where it just doesn't work. But I do actually think I've got to give credit to Taylor Wimpey that they have thought this through, and they're not just coming in here and saying that's the way it is. The visitor parking bays are way in excess of what we'd normally expect. So I think my instinct is that does cover it and will help. So while in the past I've been very vociferous on my view on this, I think the fact they've put in so many extra visitor parking way above the recommended amount probably will help it and pull it out and make it acceptable. It's marginal, but for me, I feel that particular issue is as close to being addressed as we're likely to get. But see what others have to say. I've got Councillor Passmore next.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and good morning, everybody. Yes, I've listened to this debate with great interest, actually, and I'm really pleased to have a good grasp and understanding of all the recommendations for reserved matters and the way that the developer is looking at the concerns raised. I do absolutely share your concerns about triple parking, and I do like the effort that have been made. I absolutely agree with you, Chairman. I just wonder at this stage, I would perhaps, I will propose approval of these reserved matters, but wonder if we could put a caveat and ask Taylor Wimpey and the developers just to reconsider that again with the officers under a delegated authority, if there are any further improvements, even at this late stage, that could be undertaken. Otherwise, Chairman, I'm happy to propose granting permission for these reserved matters for this development. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Passmore. Councillor Mansell, you're next.
Sorry, Chairman, if I may come in. Was that a proposal? And
yes,
was that proposal to grant reserved matters as recommended, or was it a proposal to delegate?
No, proposed to grant as proposed, but to delegate officers to have further discussions around the triple parking.
Okay.
Chairman.
My concern with that is how it doesn't give us a resolution to actually make a change. So it needs. Sorry, Ian, if you'd like to come in on that, please. If you
I think I agree with what you're about to say, John. Carry on.
Okay. So if you're delegating to officers to see if there's an improvement and then to incorporate that improvement and then issue the approval, that's fine.
Yes.
Or we're granting as a recommendation before us right now. It needs to be one or the other. Yes. I can't seek an improvement because I won't be able to integrate it without it being one type of resolution or the other. Does that make sense?
Councillor Passmore, back to you.
Well, it does sort of make sense. I'm just trying to be pragmatic to help move this forward. So if I was to say, well, I'll recommend approval as it stands, then there would be no further debate, discussion on the triple parking issue. Would that be correct? So how would you like me to phrase it if we wanted the?
Okay, let me make a suggestion, if I may.
Could I just throw something in the mix? Could we ask that the expiration isn't around the triple parking, because that's not going to change. It's around having a few more visitor parking spaces, which actually makes it. Okay. Which is the only way we can really balance out. You say on the viability grounds, they're not going to change the 4 bedrooms, but we might be able to squeak in another 3 or 4 visitor parking bays, which will just help the matter. Would you be happy with that, Tim?
I would be very happy with that personally.
So you're looking to delegate to officers to secure further visitor parking where practically possible, and then continue to approve the development as set out in the papers. Thank you.
Spot on. Absolutely.
The decision to grant the reserved matters is actually being delegated to officers, as it's quite common to say when we've got a section 106 on an outline or any application, delegated authority to the officers when the 106 has been done. This is just a slightly a varied version of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. I have a bee in my bonnet about false chimneys. Someone else had a bee in a bonnet about triple parking, and whilst I realise that this is a continuation of the previous phases of the Chiltern Fields development, and in a way, it's a bit of a shame because I feel that it's a bit sort of stuck in a rut because of those previous permissions and applications that went before this that have, if you like, made sure that this development has to have gas heating, has to be like what's gone before. And just because the previous phases have got a load of false chimneys, does that really mean that we have to carry on all the way through the development, despite the fact that fashions and things change, and clearly things have changed. So in some respects, I think that's a pity that we're sort of stuck with what went before us. On the issue of the parking, having listened to the discussion that's just been gone on, I'm not sure I am in favour of trying to find more visitor parking spaces, because I think it's which comes first, the chicken or the egg. If you provide more parking spaces, you'll end up filling them with cars. And as somebody who lives in a village where there is a large Taylor Wimpey development, where I think they've got a sort of similar arrangement of these parking bays next to the green open space with a little post and rail fence around them, and I think it looks like it works reasonably well, and I think Taylor Wimpey have thought about it, and I would be reluctant to increase the number of parking spaces. I would be more happy if we could get rid of some false chimneys and put other things that are featured on houses, but I suspect I'm hitting my head against a brick wall about that. But I mean, triple parking is an issue, but I think Taylor Wimpey have thought about it. I think what we've got here is acceptable, and I would rather we didn't look for more parking spaces on this site.
Okay, well, it may be that they can't find them, but anyway, okay, we'll keep going on. Councillor Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. My concern about this site is the future proofing. Effectively, I mean, I know you can't permanently future proof, but it feels that the application we've got today is as at what needs to be done today, not what could be done when the construction starts and when these properties are lived in, and that we really need to be thinking more about, you know, how they are powered, the water conservation much further beyond potentially what's here today. And I appreciate the developer only needs to do what is in current building regs, but I would like to have seen a little bit more about moving this forward, you know, as a lot of the public want to see, in terms of, you know, energy consumption and you know, incorporating PV into the design on the roofs. You know, that would have been a step forward. So, and with regards to, I don't want to say anything about parking particularly. My concern is more the fact that we should be encouraging more people to walk and cycle, and the fact that the cycle storage is effectively the shed down the bottom of the garden, which frankly will be filled up with garden furniture and toys and barbecues and so on, and not cycles, and that we've, you know, need to think more carefully about having secure cycle storage at these properties that's easily accessible, so that people are encouraged to cycle and not just drive. But I appreciate this is a continuation of the of 2A, as it were, and so, you know, there's possibly a lot of these discussions were done, you know, and I was involved in them way back when, how many years ago, 8-9 years ago, I think. So I would just like to have seen the developer come forward and be a little bit more forward thinking on this particular site. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. I think I've been impressed with the presentation and thank the agent and developer. I feel as though I do have a good understanding of how this development is going to move forward. Parking, I'm not overly concerned about the triple parking, because there are quite a number of visitors parking spaces, and I can see how, you know, integrating those two together would be quite a flexible approach. So not too worried about that. Chimneys, I was interested to hear that the officer spoke about the chimneys being necessary to aid navigation through the site. I found that rather strange. I wonder what other tracking skills we're going to need to move through the site. Probably unnecessary, but not going to die in a ditch over chimneys. I do worry about the electronic charging as well. I know it's been conditioned, but if when the officer talks to the developer about where we can put in charging points, houses are left without charging points, then that has a direct impact on the layout. To me, if that were to happen, then the layout is inappropriate. So in future decision making, I would be very keen to see an electronic charging point plan presented when we do talk about layout. But all in all, I think this is a good. It's a good layout. It works well for me, and I'm happy to second Councillor Passmore's recommendation. Proposed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Matheson.
Thank you. I have to explore Councillor Eburn's theme, unfortunately, about looking to the future more. An interesting point, actually. First of all, on the false chimneys, I was listening to a architect designer who has been building zero emission houses for a decade or so, and when they're retrofitting, they now actually use the existing chimneys for heat recovery, to install heat recovery. So it may be that instead of not putting false chimneys on or not, we should be actually putting real chimneys in order to facilitate that in the future. And more broadly, the you know, what is worrying me now more and more is that we're going to finish up trying to persuade people to retrofit these houses to actually bring them in line with our 2030 ambitions for net zero emissions of CO2, and the government's further ahead, similar. And really, retrofitting is so much more expensive than actually getting the things properly future-proofed at the right time. And you know, I think the other related point to all of that is the one about flood risk. The land to the south from here goes down into the valley of the River Rat, and the flooding that has got very bad in the last 2 winters down there, although we're told, well, no, the development will make matters better because we will hold the water and so on and so on, the reality, unfortunately, is more flooding and more water and more trouble. Now, I don't think I ever found out where the balancing ponds for this development would drain into, but I'm just, you know, starting to ask. I think I did ask the planning officer about the paving or tarmac point, which is in the paper somewhere. Taylor Wimpey, please start thinking about things like absorbent paving, because we're going to need those things. And I'll be returning to the flooding theme with the chair at a later stage in another meeting. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's we've got some old hands. Councillor Field, I think yours is a new one. Over to you.
Yes, just for once, it's a new one. I find I was quite convinced by the Taylor Wimpey argument on parking, and I don't honestly believe that constraining space makes the cars go away. It just makes people's life a misery. At the moment, perhaps sometime we will move away from cars and it won't be a problem anymore, but at the moment it is. I have to say I'm somewhat more concerned perhaps by the issues of the environment, the heat loss from housing. We are moving at a fairly glacial pace towards new building regulations. It would be good to see developers moving willingly and rapidly towards those standards, but perhaps that's asking too much, and we clearly don't have a legal basis for making such demands. So reluctantly one might drop them. I think the endless discussion of hydrogen at the moment is hydrogen make-believe. Perhaps people don't understand how low the sort of ignition energy for hydrogen is and the hazards in that area. So it's a nice idea, but it really is just to fend us off. Maybe sometime there will be a utopia on its way. I think charging is a bigger issue. Clearly, houses won't have 3 cars all charging up at the moment. Some may, most won't, but we are moving firmly in that direction and on quite a tight time scale. I certainly personally would be of the view that we should make sure that the basic house wiring structure should be able to support multiple chargers, and that a smaller number perhaps be provided right now. But if you're going to try and put in 3 7 kilowatts or 3 22 kilowatt chargers in the future, you're going to have to make sure the house can support that level of electricity usage. So I think there is an issue. There are issues there. Again, I really don't know how we as a committee can legally support those sort of forward-looking and somewhat wise moves. So currently, I think I will be supporting this application, with some concern that, as usual, there are opportunities which are not particularly expensive, which are being missed. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, well, I'll just be the last one to speak, I guess. So, yes, I'm also going to support this application. I do credit Taylor Wimpey with having thought about the triple parking. If there are a couple more visitor spaces, I don't see that as a negative, because I'm afraid if someone wants to drive there, they will drive there whether there is or isn't a parking space. And if there isn't, they'll just park on the grass. So if there are even just 2 more spaces that is found across the whole estate, I see that as not a negative. I can see why Councillor Mansell doesn't see it as a positive, but I think it's better than having the grass option or people parking up on a pavement or on a side of the road. So I will support it. I think, on the electric charging points, I think officers have heard very clearly that we really do think that it would not be acceptable that not every house clearly has easy access to electric charging, because that is the only way forward. Okay, so I think everyone's spoken that's wanted to speak. It's been proposed by Councillor Passmore and seconded by Councillor Mayer. Can I just, sorry, John, were you trying to come back in again?
Yeah, I just wondered if could we perhaps now just have a little discussion about the conditions. I can see no reason to vote against this, but on the other hand,
that's
I think
what we, John. Yes, that's what we do. We now ask the officer just to run through exactly what we're being asked to decide. So can I ask the Chief Planning Officer just to read out the proposals on what's being asked before we go to a vote?
Thank you, Chair. I realise I'm
asked for some other conditions, Chair, or refine them.
Yeah, we could do that once we know what we're being asked to decide first, Councillor Matheson. Right. Then we'll come back to Councillor Passmore and to Councillor Mayer, and it's up to them as they've proposed and seconded.
So, if I may,
could I read out what I've written? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, if you read that, essentially we've not changed anything other than the version of delegation. So, if you want to come back with that, please.
Thank you. So I have added, so be approved that the application be approved as detailed in the officer recommendation, with the added delegation to the Chief Planning Officer to secure further visitor parking where practically possible.
And the conditions are as set out on page 37 of your papers.
38.
Oh, sorry, 37. Yeah, they're on 2 on mine. My apologies. It does, for clarity, include what was actually conditioned to outline at the end, just to remind members that obviously a number of issues are already covered by the outline permission and what
page 38. Yeah.
38. Yeah. So, and this is obviously reserved matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Passmore, are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you, Matthew. That's fine.
And Councillor Mayer.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just refining a little landscape implementation condition, that some of that would be advanced land planting before commencement, and also that the mix of grasses for biodiversity, which is mentioned, and that would be included in that condition, please. And also that
just one sec. I think we're covering old ground. I thought we'd already heard from Taylor Wimpey that they were going to be rolling out the planting as you've just said. So that's already been discussed.
Yeah, it should be a condition if it's going to be going to be done. Yeah, the grass mix is on page 30 point specifically, and the lighting to be wildlife friendly lighting, I think, was the other one that I noticed, and also that the energy and resource efficiency to be agreed before commencement.
Can I just ask Gemma just to run through, please? Are those already in the conditions, that the points that Councillor Matheson's made?
So the landscape implementation is as the plans proposed, and I think that includes the phasing, but certainly we can make sure that that is absolutely detailed in that. As far as the ecological points, they, I think, came from the first comments from the ecologist. Those have been agreed. So, for example, the street lighting scheme, that has been confirmed as being appropriate for biodiversity. So that would be implemented as approved. Have I covered everything? I feel like I've missed something, but
before commencement, energy and resource efficiency before commencement agreed. That's what's asked for by the officer.
Yep. So if that's what's proposed by the sustainability officer, that's what we would do. Yeah.
Well, that's all very satisfactory. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Yes, just I was struggling with the super fast broadband. I see that's actually an outline. County scrutiny were informed by Openreach, I think, that they provide fibre to the premises for free if it's more than 20 houses in a development. I was wondering whether we could encourage the move in that somewhat more.
I think that's already imposed in the. I think that's already in the outline, but we'll double check. Gemma.
It is. The outline says super fast.
Yeah.
That's sort of fine for 5 years ago.
Unfortunately, because the outline was 5 years ago, it's what we are stuck with in respect of the outline considerations. And in terms of reserved matters, appearance, landscaping, we can't really get much further into changing the definition of broadband or what should be applied to this site. I would only imagine, though, that hopefully developers, in order to make their houses marketable, would be keeping up with the times in what's required in this virtual world that we're all in at the moment.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. Can we have some reassurance that these extra parking places that everyone else seems to want in this development are not going to eat into the public open space or the landscaping or any of the ecological mitigation? Because I'm a bit worried that if you're asking them to cram some more car parking in, that'll eat into the green space. So can we make sure it's not going to do that? And if they really can't find any more space without eating into the green space, then they shouldn't be doing it.
Can I give you reassurance? And I can give you reassurance on two bases. Firstly, a lot of the public open space area is to be transferred to the council as public open space, and that was part of the outline 106 agreement. I think ultimately, looking at the plan, there might be the 1 or 2 spaces possible, but there's not going to be much more beyond that without intruding into the public open space or without intruding into the wildlife measures. So I think I'm quite happy to give you that reassurance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so on that basis, we're now going to go to the vote. So can I ask the governance officer, can we conduct an electronic vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. If members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to today's agenda and click the plus sign in the top right-hand corner. There you'll get the subsection for attendance and voting. If you could please go on that and go to the voting tab. The vote is now in progress in the light blue colour. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and I can confirm that that is 8 votes for and is unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for that. And thank you, Taylor Wimpey, for joining us today. What I propose to do is to take a break now and to start again at 11:15, so in 12 minutes, when we'll pick up the next application. So we'll take a 12-minute break. Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone, and welcome back to the Development Control Committee of Mid Suffolk District Council. So we'll now move to the second application before us today, agenda item 7B in Walsham Le Willows, DC 21000113. And now I'd like to hand over to Avril Goody, the case officer, to present.
Hello there, sorry, Chairman, if I may interrupt, I apologise.
Yes.
Just before we go to the case officer, there's just a couple of things I wanted to say before in respect of this application, but also the following two applications. So in May last year, 2020, the Coronavirus Act 2020 was put into place, and it included a wide range of powers and provisions, and it was followed by a number of regulations that fitted into it as well. This included the power for local authorities to hold virtual meetings, as we are doing right now, but many of these provisions were time limited, and that includes actually the virtual meeting we are having, which expires late May. These provisions include time-limited permitted development rights, allowing development to go forward without needing planning permission. And the right for the development includes, but was not limited to, the change of use of existing buildings, new modular buildings, and also included a range of elements such as new hospitals, health facilities, testing centres. You can imagine why, obviously, but it also included additional residential accommodation. So the applications that we've got were the consequence of those regulations, and because they were time limited, the time is expiring, and therefore they are now before us as formal planning applications to be made, because obviously if they do not rectify the time limit issue, then they would have to be reverted back to what they were before. That's just really just to put it into context, the three applications that are before members today that Avril is going to present. The council engaged as the council these powers to provide accommodation, and we need to consider the applications formally as planning applications on their merits. I just wanted to clarify that before we started. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Field, you've got a question on that point.
Yes, just can make it clear. One of the applications clearly states that the work has been carried out, and we're sort of retrospectively approving work that has been done. The other two are considerably less clear, as to whether the actual building work has physically been completed or not. Could we have some clarity around that?
Yes, so the case officer will go through each one individually and explain the current position of works. But there is, because it was under permitted development in terms of change of use or indeed physical works, and in some cases they've been extended, that didn't require planning permission at that time, but it does need it now because that provision through the Coronavirus Act is running out in terms of the time constraints within the Act itself. So we are essentially, they are retrospective applications, but in a way they're not, because
they were done under what was the permission at the time.
Retrospective implies someone's done something wrong, but they have no one's done anything wrong here. It's just they've worked with the provisions available at the time.
I understand all that. I just want clarity.
There's only, John, only one has started, as my understanding, but we'll go through each one individually and can ask that question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, over to the case officer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John. So just for a quick summary on this one they haven't commenced the change of use, just because it wasn't deemed the immediate need for this residential unit at the time. So they decided to go down the planning permission route. So the application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of the common room to a general needs dwelling, the erection of a single-storey rear extension and other external alterations to the building. So the application is to be determined by committee, as Mid Suffolk District Council are the applicant and own the land. And this is an aerial image. So the application site is within the village of Badwell Ash. For some context, this is Huntston Road. I presume you can see my cursor. Yeah, Okay, this is Huntston Road connecting south towards Stow Langtoft and Elmswell, and this is the street connecting north towards Walsham the Willows. Richer Road runs east up towards Longfurlow, and the application site is situated along Richer Close, which is accessed off Richer Road. The application site comprises of a terrace of 7 single-storey dwellings, 6 of which are existing residential units, and the 7th central one is the common room. The site is surrounded by residential properties, several of which are also council-owned and on council-owned land. So as John briefly mentioned, the common room was previously used as a focal point for the residents when the units formed part of the sheltered housing scheme, but they have since become de-sheltered and are now general needs, and therefore the common room has fallen into disuse and is no longer required. So the red line dictates the application site, which is the central building for the common room. And on the right-hand plan, you can see the dark grey area illustrates the extent of the proposed single-storey extension. In terms of constraints, so as previously mentioned, the application site is on council-owned land and is also within the built-up area boundary of Badwell Ash. So here the top image shows the existing rear elevation with the existing single-storey element to be demolished with the flat roof here. And then below is the view of these from the side. And this is the front elevation. It's the building here with the chimney. You have the existing single access door to the front and the double access door, which is for access to the boiler room. And this is the existing floor plan. So it shows the common room to the rear of the building and the boiler room to the front. The unit also has a kitchen and a toilet. So as I mentioned, the existing flat roof is to be demolished, and this is depicted in the purple outline on the plans you can see here. The proposed extension would have a pitched roof with a ridge height to match the existing, and the materials would be concrete pan tiles and facing brickwork to match the existing building. The alterations to the front elevation include the removal of these double doors and bricking up with bricks to match, and replacement with a window, and also the vent to the right of there is replaced with a window. So this shows the extension, which would protrude from the rear elevation by 3.8 metres, and it would measure the length of the building, which is 6.7 metres. So the change of use would create a 2-bedroom general needs unit with a living room, kitchen and bathroom. So just for some context, here's some photos. At the forefront of this photo is the common room building. You can see this is the single access door and the double doors for the boiler room with the neighbouring general needs units to the rear of the photo. And this is just another close up of the front elevation showing this is going to be bricked up with the window, and this is the vent to be replaced with a window. And the rear elevation, this is the single-storey flat roof element to be demolished. And this just gives a bit of a wider view of the rear of the terraces, showing the flat roof element to be demolished. And just for the parking provision for the site, so it currently benefits from this lay-by, which runs along the majority of Richer Close. There's also a small parking area to the west, and several of the properties have driveways as well. So the proposal doesn't include any additional parking, as it's considered that the existing parking provision is sufficient to provide 1 to 2 parking spaces per dwelling for the general needs units at Richer Close. And then this is just a on the ground photo of that parking area showing some cars parked there. So in summary, the application seeks to make good alternative use of the common room, which is currently disused. The conversion would provide a 2-bedroom general needs unit to help meet local housing needs. The extension is small in scale and the materials would match the existing. The proposal would not alter the existing parking arrangements, which are considered sufficient to serve the site. The officer recommendation is therefore for approval, subject to the standard time frame and approved plans condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. Do we have any questions? Councillor Matheson first.
Yeah, presumably there's some reason why the boiler is no longer needed. But also I wondered if we're going to take the opportunity to put PV panels on, because curiously this roof had not got them on where the other bungalows have.
Yeah, I mean, it's not formed part of this proposal. I mean, the applicant is with us today, so whether he might touch on whether that is proposed kind of further down the line.
We can ask them when they come on.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I must admit, I was going to ask exactly the same question as Councillor Matheson, so no further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Similar, but not quite the same. The plan says phase 1 development, sort of implies there might be a phase 2. What are we not learning? The other point is that the boiler room just evaporates. Presumably it's not there for entertainment. What's it replaced by? Gas boilers in all the other buildings, or do they just freeze? Or just what is happening in that area, please? And one question, perhaps, it's got a front extension none of the other properties have. Is that because they're all sort of 1 bedroom and this is 2 bedroom? I didn't quite understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the reference to phasing isn't really relevant at this stage. At one point it was just showing, I think, that it was just going to be 1 bedroom to start with, and then when the works of the boiler room commenced, that would then be converted to a 2nd bedroom. I believe, I will let the applicant confirm for definite, but I believe the boiler room, they're being replaced with air source heat pumps, but I don't want to give that as a definite answer. It's probably something worth just
ask the applicant.
Yeah. And in terms of the extension, that is purely a single-story rear extension to facilitate kind of making it that habitable space for a residential unit.
So the other units aren't a habitable space, is that my interpretation?
I believe the other units are 1 bedroom, and this is to provide 2 bedrooms.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions, so we'll move on. So we don't have a representative of the Parish Council or an objector or a supporter, but we do have the applicant, Glenn Allen. So over to you, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please.
Hello, my name's Glenn Allen. I'm a building surveyor for Mid Suffolk District Council.
Could you turn your camera on, please?
Oh, sure.
Start the clock, don't worry. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Glenn Allen. I'm a building surveyor for Mid Suffolk District Council. The explanation that Avril gave at the beginning pretty much covers exactly what the building has been or is intended to be converted for. There was a requirement seen at the beginning of the COVID epidemic, and it was a requirement that from government that the councils provided emergency accommodation. I believe, as it's turned out, the epidemic hasn't been anywhere near as serious as perhaps was considered to be the very worst case scenario. So there were 3 properties in a phase 1 of this project which were converted last summer, and then there was a 2nd phase, which this forms one of those addresses, that was going to be developed again under permitted development and just pushed through, if you like. But the management team for the council decided that these phases would be done more traditionally by getting applications in for planning for building regulations and then going out to tender the work in the usual way. To answer some of the questions that were asked earlier on, the original intention, because this was going to be done under permitted development and done very quickly, is that the boiler room needed to stay in place because that provides heat and hot water for some of the other buildings in the terrace, basically because the property was standalone, sheltered at one point. all of the infrastructure in there still exists for that, and they don't, bar one property, they don't have individual heating and hot water sources. The change of change of direction by the management to do this more traditionally then meant that there wasn't the need to maintain the boiler room, and whilst creating a habitable space. And in actual fact, what we did is we then combined the two phases, because it's going to be more cost effective to do that, and also because there is now an ability to put individual heating and hot water sources into the other bungalows. So what will effectively happen is this development will allow all of those units, which are now general needs housing, to all be standalone units with their own heating and hot water source, whilst developing the central underused or no longer used space. The reason that that was made 2-bedroom is because of the layout of the existing building and the original intention to have to maintain the boiler room. There needed to be an extension on the back to get up to minimum room areas. Obviously, with that change in tax slightly, that has allowed us to actually make that a slightly more significant building, in that it's now 2-bedroom and can accommodate potentially 4 people. So what's actually turned out to be a scheme that was designed initially about a year ago has actually developed into what we have now.
Okay, thank you very much. I was going to say your time is up, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your explanation about the boiler room, because I too was going to ask exactly the same question as Councillor Matheson and Councillor Field, and I took my hand down then. But can you perhaps mention the fact that about the PV panels, the other dwellings in that terrace also all appear to have PV panels. When you look at the aerial photograph, is there any plan to put PV on this one whilst you're doing the rest of the building work?
Currently, there isn't. The reason behind that is the benefit for those PV panels going up there is purely for the residents. So it's a cost to the council, but they benefit from the electricity saving. The council do not benefit in any way. What we basically have to do is we finance putting those on, and we have to finance the maintenance of those, but we don't get any cash payback. Therefore, when they were originally put up, there was this feed-in tariff, and we did have some kind of benefit from it. That has disappeared now, and my understanding from my mechanical and electrical colleagues is that we no longer put those up because we incur cost, but we gain nothing from it.
Well, I think that's a debatable point, so I'll leave that for later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
Yes, we might assume that removing fuel poverty is a gain to the community, but there you go. The real question is, you didn't expand on the heating means in the other dwellings. Is it air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, or gas boilers? And is the insulation of those buildings up to either of the sustainable possibilities?
Excuse me, the new building will be compliant with building regulation requirements. The heating systems for the other buildings, there's no gas in the area, so they're all going to be air source heat pump systems. One of the buildings already benefits from air source heat pump, so what will happen is all 7 of them will have individual systems.
Thank you, that sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Will you enhance the insulation to match their new heating means?
At the moment, there is no proposal to do any works on the other properties. This is just the development of the old common room and the provision of new heating systems for those individual units.
So that's all that's before us today, John. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so thank you for that. We now move over to the ward member. Councillor Mayor, would you like, over to you?
Thank you, Chair. I have very little to say other than to just reiterate that the parish council didn't wish to make any comment. On a personal basis, I think it's disappointing if this project goes forward and the people living there are somewhat discriminated by not having PV panels. I think they probably question why, and would definitely benefit from their installation. But I'll leave that for the committee to discuss. So no comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a question for the ward member, Councillor Muller. Councillor Muller, you've put your hand up. Do you have a question for the ward member?
Sorry, Chair, I'm trying to get rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. Okay. Any questions for the ward member? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So now over to us to discuss, debate, and reach a conclusion on this application. Thank you. Councillor Muller, then Councillor Mansell.
Yes, apologies for the previous hand, Chair. Yes, I do actually really like this proposal, but like colleagues, I am disappointed that the residents that will move into this property once it's converted, if we grant planning permission, won't benefit from the solar panels. But that aside, I'd be happy to move approval, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with the sentiment of converting what is currently being an unused space into a habitable dwelling, but I think it is very, very short-sighted of the applicant. And when we talk about the applicant, we're actually talking about us as a council, and I think that is an extremely disappointing response. That, oh, we don't get any financial benefits, so we're not going to bother putting solar panels on the roof, as has been said by Councillor Field. You know, getting people out of fuel poverty, making sure people have enough money to pay their bill so that they are not defaulting on the rent. Surely that is a benefit, and I think it is a crying shame that we are not deciding to put panels on the roof at the same time as doing the rest of the building work, because surely that is a more efficient way of doing it. So I don't know if that can be. Presumably we can't add solar panels now because this is what we've got. But it seems churlish that we're all going to refuse this just because we want solar panels on the roof. And I really don't know what can be done about it, because we don't want to refuse it because on the basis of it, it's a good thing. But it just seems that it's a really, really, really short-sighted of us as a council.
What we could do is we could put a informative note that we wish to see. We think it panels should be put it on the accommodation. Maybe that's a possible way, or we can condition that we want PV the panels put on the roof. It's up to us. We can do one or the other. I mean, the difficulty with conditioning is I guess I mean, it's not sheltered housing, so I guess it depends who goes into the housing, because obviously it would be funding that goes to them. So we'd be paying for the panels, and the funding doesn't come to us; it goes to whoever is renting the property.
Yeah. I realise that, but if that is a proposition, then if we add the condition that we expect to see PV panels put on the roof to a condition, then I might be willing to second the proposal.
Can I just ask the case officer, because I mean, I just want to get into the just so we have clear. I mean, if we do that, does that mean the rent will go up because there's an increased cost in running the? Because there's been how's that going to actually impact the person occupying the property? Can we have clarity on that?
I don't think we actually would have an answer for that, Chairman. We don't know.
May I check?
Yes, please.
As the legal advisor, may I? I'm hoping I can be heard and that I'm visible. I need to ask the case officer: is the putting panels on the other existing dwellings, the one-bedroom units that were originally sheltered, would that be an act of development that required planning permission? I presume it would be.
They're already done, the other properties.
Right. Okay. But the changes that are members have expressed disappointment. I mean, are they acts of development that would require planning permission?
There is permitted development rights for solar panels on domestic properties.
So in fact, they don't need planning. I thought that was the case. I was just slightly confused by something somebody said earlier. But so they wouldn't require planning permission. But now the next question is the rest of the set of dwellings, if I can use that term, where is the red line on this plan? Is it just the common room and the land that's needed to expand it for this new dwelling?
Yep, that's right.
Also, so in that case, there might be a question about whether we lawfully could impose a condition relating to things that are outside, as it were, outside the application.
But the other dwellings have already got solar panels on.
It's
only this one we're talking about.
We're only talking about this one. We're only talking about putting solar panels on this proposal.
Sorry, I got the wrong end. I do apologise. Wrong end of the stick. So in fact, that would be something that would. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Right. Okay. Well, I'll leave it to the case officer to advise the committee on that. Sorry, I thought I misunderstood something and thought we were going somewhere where we weren't.
So, what can we or can we not condition PV panels? Can we have an answer on that, please?
Was that to me, Chair?
Yeah, please.
There is nothing stopping you putting a condition on to say that you're only going to find the application satisfactory if it has solar panels, PV on. And if I was to try and support the reasoning for the condition, I would direct members to paragraphs 148 and 154A of the NPPF that refer to supporting as a planning system the use of renewable energies and recognising that even small scale development projects such as even a PV panel on a roof has a benefit in respect of reducing carbon and greenhouse matters.
Thank you. Councillor Mayor, do you want to go, Councillor Muller, do you want to go down that route as you proposed it?
Yes, I'm happy with that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Mansell, did you want to second it?
Yeah, now that we've got a condition about PV panels.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We'll keep going to other members then. So I've got Councillor Eburn, then Councillor Field, then Councillor Passmore.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make the same point, so that others have now made, and I think it was very good to have Glenn Allen on the call explaining that to us today, because it was not clear from the papers. So I appreciated that, but you know, I think this is a good use of this room and to make it, or this unit as it were, to make it into 2-bed, and it's just a shame we don't sort of maximise that through the PV as has been discussed. So other than that, I'd be happy with the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Field.
I think I'm fairly happy. You know, the questions have been asked, but could I just ask the legal officer? I did just lose my earth leakage breaker just came out and I lost power to the house, so I missed a minute or 2 or 3 of the meeting. Is it okay for me to continue?
Right. Do we know which? Silly question, possibly. Do we know which minute or 2? Who
I missed the bit where John Pakeman G was discussing the possibility of a condition on solar PV.
Well, I think, Councillor, I think you've got the point. I think you understand. I mean, normally I'm very cautious about losing a member even for a short time, but I think if the governance officer agrees with me, I think I think you understand the essential point that's been made in the last 5-10 minutes of conversation. I don't think your ability to participate is seriously prejudiced. That would be my advice at the moment.
Could I just to mention, if you miss me mentioning the supporting factor for the condition could be led by paragraphs 148 and 154A of the NPPF. That was the fundamental point I made. So as long as you're clear on that now, as I've just repeated it, I think you'd be okay in terms of what Ian has said.
I'm indeed clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Passmore.
Nothing to add, Chairman. I'm very happy with what's proposed, so I should be supporting it.
Okay, well, on that basis, we're now going to go to the vote, and I'll ask the Chief Planning Officer to read out the proposal on the table, and then we'll ask the Governance Officer to conduct electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we go to that point, did we get? I don't believe we got a seconder.
Yes, Councillor Mansell.
Oh, apologies. I wasn't.
That was me. Sorry.
Apologies, Councillor Mansell. So I have in the recommendation that the application be approved as detailed in the officer recommendation with the additional condition for photovoltaic panels. Is that acceptable, Mr. Pakeman G, with that wording?
Yes, although can I add the words to be agreed at the end, so that it is in the local authority's interest to agree the detailing and location and so on. So we need to have to be agreed.
I have added that.
Thank you.
So, Chair, if you're happy for me to proceed.
Please.
Thank you. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to the plus sign on today's agenda and go to the subsection on voting and attendance, and then go to the voting tab, and the vote will be shown in progress as a light blue line. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I have received all votes, discounting Councillor Mayers as he can't vote as ward member. That is 7 votes for and is unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next application, DC 21-00122, the Common Room at Victoria Gardens, Watersfield. Back to you, please, Avril.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. If you could just confirm that you can see the slides, please.
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. Okay, so similar to the previous application, the works haven't been completed under the permitted development rights. So the application is for full planning permission for the change of use of the common room to a general needs dwelling and the erection of a single-storey extension. This application also seeks the creation of a parking area to serve the units. The application is to be determined by committee, as Mid Suffolk District Council are the applicant and also own the land. So for the aerial image, the application site is within the village of Watersfield. To the north of the site here is the A143, which if you were to travel west goes towards Ickworth and Bury St Edmunds, and then east towards Diss. The application site is accessed from the highway of the street, which runs south through the village. The application site comprises of 6 residential units within a single-storey building. To the east of the building is Watersfield Community Centre and Recreation Ground, and there are residential properties to the west and the south. So this is the site location plan and site plan submitted with the application. The dark grey area shown on the plan on the right depicts the common room centrally within the building. And again, the same applies as with the previous application, where the common room is now in a kind of a state of disuse and is no longer required. So in terms of constraints, it's council-owned land as previously, and it's also within the settlement boundary of Watersfield. It's also within Watersfield Conservation Area, and there is a Grade 2 listed building to the south, shown in orange here, and also further northwest. And just a note before we go through the plans, just to be clear with reference to rear, that is taken to be the elevation facing the highway of the street, with the front being the single access door, which is the other side. So this is the central gable to which hosts the common room, where the extension is proposed, and the view of this gable from the sides. This is the existing floor plan showing the common room and the boiler room, and the unit also has a kitchen and toilet. So this plan shows the proposed extension, which would have a pitched roof with an eaves and ridge height to match the existing building. The proposed materials would be concrete pan tiles and facing brickwork to match the existing building. So this shows the extension from the side elevations. It would protrude 3.4 metres from the rear elevation, and fenestration is proposed to both side elevations. And similarly, the proposal is for the change of use and extension to create a 2-bedroom general needs unit with living room, kitchen and bathroom. So this is a plan showing the Suffolk County Council highway limits, with the green being the adopted highway. So you can see the access road from the street is privately owned. This is the existing parking arrangement, which is currently just parking on the private highway. The road is also used to access the community centre to the west, to the east, sorry. And this is the proposal. It's to provide echelon parking in the form of 5 general use spaces and 1 disabled use space. The on-road parking would remain. The hedgerow to the east is to be cut back or grubbed out to facilitate the parking area and would be replaced with a 0.9 metre high fence. So in terms of photos, this shows the units at Victoria Gardens. The extension is proposed to this central gable here. And just a close-up of that central gable with the common room there. So this is what we're referring to as the front elevation with the single access door and similarly the double door for the boiler room. And this is the grassed area which is proposed for the parking area with the hawthorn hedge running along the left of this photo. Watersfield Parish Council have raised concerns regarding the removal of this hedge, so we are proposing an additional condition to mitigate this, which I will cover shortly. And then this is the same proposed parking area with the hedgerow shown here. So in summary, the application seeks to make good alternative use of the common room. The conversion would provide a 2-bedroom general needs unit. The extension is small in scale and the materials would match the existing. The proposal is not considered to have a detrimental impact on the conservation area. The parking facilities would provide a betterment to the site overall, and the proposal is therefore, the recommendation, is therefore for approval subject to the standard timeframe and approved plans condition, and a condition to provide the parking and manoeuvring areas as requested by the Highways Authority. And in addition to the conditions listed in the report, it is recommended that a further condition is imposed to ensure that the hedge is retained, or if this is not possible, the submission of details of a replacement hedge is provided. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, happy, Councillor Field, you've got your camera on, just so you know. Happy to open it up to colleagues for any questions at this stage. Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify that when we're talking about the hedge, we are talking about that low thing that was in your photo, not the band of trees that appeared to separate this plot
yes,
with the playing
correct.
field?
Yeah,
correct.
We aren't talking about getting rid of those trees. We're talking about just dealing with that low hedge. Right, thank you.
It's the hawthorn hedge. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask about the large oil tank that is currently on the site? I assume because the boiler room's going and that more modern heating systems will be put in, that tank will be removed.
That question probably is also best focused towards Glenn, because I believe the same situation is happening here with air source heat pumps, but
we'll ask the
probably
applicant
best to
the
cover.
question.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Matheson. We'll come back to you, Glenn, when we come to your section.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor
I just wondered whether, if we're going to pave over that grassy area for car parking, can we pave it with something which will actually allow the water to penetrate rather than run off? That's for Glenn as well, really, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and yeah, or debate. It's not really for. I mean, we could. Avril, what is proposed currently? Let's ask that question.
Okay, bear with me. I don't think we have specific details of the material to be used, but I would assume it's
we'll ask Glenn then.
A tarmac. But Glenn might be able to give more details on that.
Yep.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Any other questions? Councillor Mayor, I think that's an old hand. Any other questions at all? No. Okay, so we will move on to the applicant. We don't have a representative of the Parish Council. We don't have an objector or a supporter, but we do have Glenn Allen, who has 3 minutes to address the committee, please. Over to you. And if you could turn your camera on. Thank you.
Hello. Again, with this proposal, It was something that was going to be done very quickly under permitted development, and hence there was going to be the retention of the plant room originally, or the boiler room, because again, historically, all of the other buildings are supplied, their heating and hot water supply comes from this area. Because of the change in TAC again, this was one of the ones that was going to be in the phase 2. It's now going to be done more traditionally, so we're doing planning and building regulations and tendering for the work. Again, as Avril pointed out, part of this will be to take a more holistic approach in the development of this. So the boiler room will be, and the development of the living space will all become one now, and the surrounding buildings will all benefit from new air source heat pump systems going in. Again, there's no gas in the village, so this is a good option and is renewable. Sorry, sustainable. In respect of the old system being taken out, the oil tank and the plinth that it stands on will be removed as part of that works as well, so that the whole system will be decommissioned top to bottom. In respect of the parking, that will be put in using a permeable construction. So we have a material which allows for the water to filter through the wearing course and into the sub base. So that will be, again, a sustainable solution to that and not require any upgrade of the drainage on site. In terms of the hedge that runs along that boundary line, I think perhaps the drawings are a little bit misleading there, in that they're kind of diagrammatic rather than actually showing exactly what will happen. The hedge is considerably smaller than shown on the drawings, and there is no intention to take that hedge out. The only place that it is potentially going to be affected is where the disabled bay sits, as the ground or the line of the land there does narrow very slightly, and the car parking bay gets quite close to the hedge at that point. So there might need to be some mitigation just at that point there, but other than that, the hedge would simply be cut back and retained.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions for the applicant. Do we have any further questions? Yeah, Councillor Field.
I just wondered, as we're extending car parking and doing various work in that area, whether we're adding any electric car charging points for our residents.
There had been no intention to do that as part of this development.
Is that forward thinking? And my other question perhaps was, I'm sure you've checked, but that the electrical supply to what was sheltered accommodation is up to supporting the devices we require, which are air source heat pumps.
Yes, as part of the works, there will be the need to put in a new electrical supply into the building. At the moment, the existing plant room has a three-phase supply that will need to be stripped out and completely renewed with a brand new single-phase supply, so sufficient electrical provision will be made.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions at all? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you very much. So we move over to the ward member, Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Again, very little to say. I'm delighted to see that the hedge, albeit not a very big one, is being retained. A parking solution that required that hedge to be ripped out when we've got major oil tanks being removed just seemed to be to lack imagination. So it's a good to see that being retained. And I'd also point out that the village hall has a large car park, so visiting parking spaces are readily available. So there was really no need to remove that hedge, but generally the parish council are supportive of this change. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, members, any questions for the ward member? Okay, if not, happy to open up for general discussion and debate and to reach a conclusion. Councillor Matheson.
Well, I think all our questions have reasonably been answered already, so I think I would propose approval.
Thank you. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Matheson's approval. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak, or should we go to a vote? Anyone else wish to speak? No. Okay. Can we go? Can you remind us, please, what we're being asked to decide, and can the governance officer go to conduct the electronic vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. As it's there's been no change to the recommendation. It simply reads that application DC 21 00122 be approved as detailed in the officer recommendation. But I will just amend that to say updated officer recommendation in light of what Avril has added.
Yes, thank you. Just to add the hedge element.
Yep, so I'll just put the updated so that all members are clear that that's what that includes. So members, the vote is now in progress. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to today's agenda, click the plus sign in the top right hand corner and go to the subsection on voting/attendance. There you will see from going on that tab the light blue line for the vote in progress. As we're getting further down the agenda, you may need to scroll down. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, excluding Councillor Mayer as he is the ward member, so that is 7 votes for and is unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to DC 21 00101 in Norton. Back to you again, Avril, please.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen again. So this is the final one of the series, and this one they have done the change of works under the COVID-19 emergency permitted development rights. So the proposal therefore seeks to retain these works. So again, full planning permission is sought for change of use of the common room to a general needs dwelling and parking upgrades. So the application site is within the village of Norton. This is the A1088, which heads north to Ickworth or south to Elmswell and Woolpit. And the application site is accessed via the street, which runs east to west to the south of the site. So the application site comprises of 7 single-storey buildings, 6 of which comprise residential units, with the central one being the common room. So you have Norton Primary School to the northwest of the site, and then residential properties to the south and the west. This is the site location plan and site plan submitted with the application. The dark grey area shown on the plan on the right depicts the common room. In terms of constraints, again, the application site is on council-owned land. It is within the built-up area boundary of Norton, and School Close is also a public right-of-way which continues north along the agricultural fields. So these existing elevations are pre any COVID permitted development rights, so how it looked previously, and I do have some photos of that so you can see the changes. So there is fenestration to all elevations previously, and the floor plan previously was the common room, kitchen, toilet and 2 storerooms to the top of there. So this is the proposed elevations / current elevations. So there is no extension proposed to this building. You'll note that the elevations are largely the same. The alterations include changes to the window arrangements on the southern, western and northern elevations. The double access door has been changed to a single access door on this west elevation here. And there's also a new window which has been added to the east elevation, which I believe serves a bedroom. And then black hardy plank cladding has also been applied to the areas where the glazing and UPVC panels have been removed. So this is the proposed and current floor plan. So the change of use would create a permanent 2-bedroom general needs unit with a living room, kitchen and 2 bathrooms. So in terms of parking provision, the previous parking provision was the small lay-by to the west of the site, which hosts the ambulance drop-off and disabled spaces. That's depicted in white in this plan. And the proposal is to create an additional 7 spaces, 6 of which are to be general needs and 1 of which is to be for disabled use. So these additional spaces would obviously reduce the amount of on-road parking along School Close. So in terms of photos, this is the site prior to the COVID-19 works. So the central building here with the chimney is the common room. It has the white cladding and the double entrance doors here, and you can just about make out kind of what the parking arrangements were previously. So this is the current / proposed front elevation. So you've got the change to the single access door and the application of black cladding. This is the northern side elevation, which is largely the same. And then this is the east elevation with, you can see the new window that's been installed here. And then the other side, south elevation. This is just another view of it prior to the COVID-19 works. So the existing parking arrangements. And then the final photo shows the works to the parking as completed. So you've got the additional 4 spaces here and then the 3 spaces down the far end. So in summary, the application makes good use of the common room. The permanent conversion would provide a 2-bedroom general needs unit. The external alterations are limited to fenestration and cladding. The proposal would provide parking improvements to benefit the whole site. So the recommendation is therefore for approval, subject to the standard timeframe condition and approved plans condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. I noticed all the other buildings on the site had white cladding. Was there any particular reason why this one's got black cladding? Thank you.
I don't know the specific reason for it being black. I know that I believe it was needed to be changed to comply with building regulations. But in terms of the colour choice, I don't know why.
Thank you. Just a comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Mansell.
Can I just ask how this dwelling is being heated? Does it have an air source heat pump that we've been talking about amongst the other?
The applicant's next, if you don't know, Avril.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Probably a Glenn question, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's in the picture you showed.
Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on. So we don't have a representative of the parish council. We don't have an objector or a supporter, but we do have the applicant. So Glenn Allen, over to you, and again 3 minutes, please.
Hello again. This property was done in phase 1 of the works and was therefore developed last summer and completed tail end of the summer. The property was originally intended to be converted with the existing window arrangement in place, but as it turned out, these didn't comply for several reasons. Some of it to do with insulation and U values, some of it to do with security. And so the arrangement was changed to a new set of windows. In doing this, the opportunity arose to change the wall layout. The original glazed and clad sections were very old and very poorly insulated. So this gave us the opportunity to actually bring these up to a much higher standard. The reason that the cladding was black is this was deemed to be in keeping with the remainder of the building. There's quite a lot of black painted fascias and soffits around the other buildings and also on this existing building, and this was done in conjunction with discussions with planning, so it wasn't a unilateral decision by building services. This was something that was done in consultation. The building is heated by an air source heat pump system. The existing building was fairly large in size, and the internal layout was not amended significantly. The existing hall was, excuse me, was split into 2 bedrooms and a living room. The parking at the front was addressed at the time of the development because School Close in Norton has always been a pinch point because of the school and because of school leaving off times and the various issues with parking there. It was deemed essential to deal with this as not only to address this development, but to also address the ongoing problems in that area, which it has done. And the provision of the additional parking has exceeded what was required for the development in terms of spaces. There's an additional parking space in there, which has alleviated significantly the problems that did pre-exist. Other than that, I think I've covered the points.
Thanks very much. Any questions at all? Yes, Councillor Field.
Is the ambulance only parking space still there and necessary? Does it serve the school as well, or do our residents need that? Could it be deployed more usefully to alleviate the other problems?
That was deemed necessary to keep that. When we did the parking improvements, the way that this was done is that's part, the original parking bay was part of the highway, which we had no jurisdiction to work in. The easiest way to achieve what we needed to achieve was for us to put in adoptable construction either side, but for that to be controlled by the council going forward. So that's a maintenance item for the council. The only thing that we were allowed to do was to change the white lining, and under guidance of highways, we kept the ambulance bay. It was shrunk very slightly. You will have seen from Averil's original photograph that there was a very large ambulance bay there and 1 disabled space. We were able to shrink that very slightly and end up with 2 disabled spaces just there. Predominantly, the residents in the area are elderly, so it's deemed that keeping the ambulance bay is important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, so is this now general needs housing like the others, or is it still sheltered?
This is general needs.
Right, thank you.
Okay, we have no other questions, so thank you very much. Now, Wendy Turner we thought might be coming, but I don't see her on the call, and Harry Richardson has given his apologies and won't be speaking. So there are no ward members, so I guess it's over to us to discuss, debate and reach a conclusion. Who would like to go first, please? Councillor Mansell.
Thank you, Chair. As the once a ward member of Norton, I'm very much aware of this this particular area of Norton, and much as I don't like the to increase the amount of parking excessively, it's always been a bone of contention with Norton Parish Council about parking on School Road. So and these particular this particular group of what was sheltered housing is now general needs housing doesn't actually have any didn't have any parking at all. So the fact that I presume now each one of those units effectively has a parking space, so long as those parking bays are not abused by parents picking kids up from the school, because if you ever go through Norton at school pickup time, you'll see the cars are chaotic all along the street, which isn't a particularly wide road. So I can't, this has to be supported. This is a good scheme. It's put the common room into use. So I'd be happy to propose the make whatever it is, propose the recommendation. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, it's an asset to Norton, really.
Thank you. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second the proposal made by Councillor Mansell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing to add apart from I think it's a good scheme, so I shall be voting for it.
Thank you. And Councillor Eburn.
Sorry, Chair, I was about to second, so I will put my hand down.
The rush to second. Okay, on that basis, I think we'll hand over to the Governance Officer to ask us for an electronic vote and to remind us what we're being asked to vote on, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as per the last one, there are this is to approve the details in the officer recommendation, but there are no updated conditions to go with this one. So it's solely what is in members' papers. So I've now started the vote. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app, click the plus sign in the top right-hand corner of today's agenda and go to the subsection on voting and attendance. The vote is now in progress and will be shown in a light blue line. You may need to scroll down. And before I've even finished, everyone's finished. So that is carried, Chair, unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, thank you for that. So we're on to the last application before us today, DC 20-05665, land at Little Meadows Farm, Banyards Green in Laxfield. Now I'd like to hand over to the case officer, Catherine Hale. Over to you, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen so you can view the presentation. Can you all see the presentation on the screen?
Yeah, we can see that. Thanks.
Okay, so this application is for the direction of a new dwelling northeast of Laxfield. You can see here on the site location plan, it has previously been to committee. It went to committee B on the 5th of February 2020, and members voted to go with officer recommendation of approval subject to a number of conditions. This application basically seeks just to an alternative scheme, mostly changes to the fenestration, which I'll show a bit later on, as well as the roof materials, and the access point has changed, but otherwise a principle has been established previously. So this is just the aerial street view to show us the barn in its immediate surroundings. And just a obviously zoomed out image. It's just slightly further down. The barn is actually situated on this corner, but also you can see Laxfield over here. Constraints map, as you can see, there's no actual constraints. There is a footpath to the south of the site, but the site isn't actually constrained by anything. This is the proposed block plan. So you can see the barn here, parking spaces, and this is obviously the access off of the unnamed road off Vickers Hill. So this is the barn as existing. And these were the previously approved plans. And the next slide will show obviously a few of the changes. So it's mostly to the fenestration. So there's an addition of a new window here. They're removing a window that was previously approved here, and making the windows slightly larger, as well as the bifold doors. So just to make it clearer, again, this is what was previously approved. This is what is now proposed. So you can see addition of a window here. The fenestration is slightly larger. Bifold doors are slightly larger. Southwest elevation, you can see it's more or less the same. Again, just fenestration is slightly bigger, and the addition of the removal of the window here. And same again. So this window is slightly larger, but otherwise the amount of fenestration on this elevation has not changed. And again, southeast elevation. So the proposed fenestration is slightly bigger, but otherwise it's still in the same place. So the proposed access has changed. Originally from the previously approved scheme, it was off a private road, private track here. It is now proposed to be basically an existing shared access. Highways are happy with this, and visibility displays meet their requirements. So the recommendation is approval subject to the conditions which are set out in the bundle.
Thanks very much. Okay. Do we have any questions at all on what's been presented? Nope. Okay. No questions. Okay, so we'll move on. We don't have the parish council, we don't have an objector, we don't have a supporter, we don't have the agent, and we don't have the applicant. The ward member is Councillor Judy Flatman, who has given her apologies but has indicated support for the proposal via an email. And that is it. So members, it's over to us to discuss and debate and to reach a conclusion. Councillor Muller.
Thank you, Chair. In view that the parish council have no objections, the ward member does have no objections, I would recommend approval as stated in the papers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Passmore.
I would like to second it. Second Councillor Muller's proposal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Nope. Okay, I'm going to hand over to the governance officer to please remind us what we're being asked to vote on and to take an electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation for this application is as set out in the papers with no amendments. So I will start the vote now. So if members could please go to the modern.gov app and go to the plus sign in the top right hand corner and go on the voting tab. The vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been received, and that is a unanimous vote for.
Thank you very much. Okay, final item on the agenda. Do we have any site inspection requests that needed to be reported to the committee, please?
None received, Chair.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you very much. See you at planning referrals on Friday, and we